The alien girl had eyes like twin galaxies, endlessly deep, filled with shifting colors that shimmered when she blinked. Her name was Saria, a daughter of the Kethri, a species that prided themselves on their mastery of mental intimacy. To them, words were clumsy things, crude signals scraped from tongues and teeth. They believed the highest form of connection lay not in spoken conversation, but in the merging of thoughts, an intimacy deeper than touch. The human, David, didn't know what to make of her when she approached him in the neutral zone station. He'd been there for months, trading scavenged parts and occasionally running cargo for credits. Saria appeared beside him one evening in the lounge, her iridescent robes catching light like liquid crystal. "You are human," she said, her voice smooth but accented. "Your kind is said to be closed." She tilted her head. "May I prove otherwise?" David raised an eyebrow. "Closed? What's that supposed to mean?" Her lips curved into a smile, mischievous, yet oddly gentle. "You guard your minds with iron walls. But there's another way. The Kethri bond not through flesh or sound, but through thought itself. We call it mental intimacy. Few outsiders can withstand it. Would you dare?" He laughed softly, but something about her gaze cut through his defenses. "Sounds like a weird party trick. What's the catch?" "The catch," she said, leaning closer, "is that when you open, there's no lie, no mask, no hiding. Your essence flows into mine. Mine flows into yours. We see one another as we are, raw and entire." That sent a chill down David's spine. He thought about the things he kept buried, his fears, his scars, the guilt he carried from Earth's wars. But her eyes didn't look mocking. They looked curious, compassionate, like she wanted to understand. "All right," he muttered. "Show me." They met in a quiet chamber at the edge of the station, designed for Kethri rituals. The walls were smooth and glowing faintly, the air humming with resonance. Saria sat cross-legged on a mat, motioning for David to do the same opposite her. "Relax," she instructed. "Breathe. Do not fight me. Let your mind be soft." David chuckled nervously. "That's easy for you to say." "Sure, close your eyes." He did. A moment later, he felt something, like a feather brushing inside his skull. Not pain, not invasive, but undeniably there. Saria's presence. It wasn't like hearing a voice. It was more like a tide washing up against his consciousness. "Do not resist," her thought whispered, not through ears but straight into the marrow of his being. "Invite me." He hesitated, then tried to loosen his grip on his own thoughts. For a split second, panic bubbled. What if she saw everything, even the worst in him? But Saria's presence was gentle, coaxing, and then like a door swinging open, their minds touched. It was like falling into starlight. He felt her emotions. Curiosity, wonder, 1,000 years of cultural pride, and a flicker of nervousness that surprised him. She wasn't as fearless as she looked. Beneath her practiced calm, she worried he might recoil from her true self. And in return, she felt him, his loneliness, his restless hunger for belonging, his memories of laughter back on Earth, of holding hands with someone long gone, of firefights in alien deserts where survival had a price too steep. She flinched, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she held him, not physically, but with a warmth that flooded into his mind like a sunrise breaking after endless night. "You are scarred," she thought tenderly, "but scars are proof you endured." David's throat tightened. He hadn't realized how badly he needed someone to simply see him without judgment. When they pulled back, gasping like divers breaking the surface, he opened his eyes. Saria's cheeks shimmered, a Kethri blush. "Humans," she whispered, almost in awe. "You feel so strongly. You amplify everything. We trained for years to manage intensity. Yet you," she placed a trembling hand over her chest, "you pour oceans without effort." He smirked weakly. "Sorry, guess we're messy inside." "No," she shook her head fiercely. "Not messy. Powerful. Dangerous. Yes, but also beautiful." David didn't know what to say. For the first time in years, he felt like someone had really seen him. Not the mercenary, not the drifter, but the man underneath. Over the following weeks, Saria insisted on teaching him more. Every session went deeper. She showed him how to weave memories together, to share joy like a melody between minds. She let him feel what it was like to grow under alien skies, to run through crystalline forests that sang when wind passed through them. And he let her glimpse Earth, the scent of rain on asphalt, the crackle of a campfire, the sound of a mother's lullaby. What surprised her most was how quickly he adapted. Kethri trainees usually stumbled, overwhelmed by the flood of raw emotion. But David learned to ride the current, to balance on the knife edge of intensity. Sometimes he even led, guiding her into corners of thought she hadn't dared explore. He showed her humor, sharp, irreverent, sometimes dark, and she laughed until her body shook, confessing later that Kethri rarely experienced that flavored joy. One night, after a particularly deep session, she confessed aloud, "We thought humans too crude for this art, but perhaps it is we who are crude. You wield emotion like fire. You burn." David reached out, brushing her hand. "And you don't mind?" Her eyes glowed softly. "I crave it." Yet intimacy is never without risk. One evening, as they merged, she accidentally stumbled into a memory he'd locked away tight. The moment he failed to save a comrade, the screaming, the blood. Shame and guilt poured into her before he could stop it. She gasped, recoiling. "I told you not to look there," he said hoarsely, breaking the link. Tears shimmered down her face. "I am sorry. I did not mean to intrude." He turned away, jaw clenched. "Now you see why humans aren't meant for this. We got too much ugliness inside." But Saria rose, came to him, and placed her palm against his chest. "Do you think the Kethri are pure? We hide wars, betrayals, cruelties behind our elegance. The difference is, you do not hide. You bleed honesty. That is not weakness. That is courage." Her words struck deeper than any blade. Slowly, he let her rest her forehead against his. They didn't need to link minds this time. The closeness was enough. The final test came when Saria invited him to join a Kethri circle, a ritual where multiple minds intertwined, sharing a collective embrace. Elders scoffed at the idea of a human partaking, but Saria insisted. When the circle began, David braced for rejection. Instead, the Ketheri gasped as his presence entered, not crude, not disruptive, but amplifying. His emotions didn't scatter them. They harmonized, binding the circle tighter. Where the Ketheri had finesse, he added fuel. Where they had technique, he added heart. Together, the connection burned brighter than it ever had. Afterward, the elders stared at him in stunned silence. One finally murmured, "Perhaps humans were made for this." Later, in private, Saria clasped his hands. "Do you see now? Mental intimacy is not ours alone. It is universal. And you are extraordinary at it." David chuckled, shaking his head. "Never thought I'd be good at something like that." She leaned in, pressing her forehead to his. "You are more than good. You are dangerous, intoxicating, and I cannot stop wanting more." For the first time in years, David didn't feel alone. He felt known, accepted, and cherished in a way words could never express. And as their thoughts brushed once again, he realized something startling. Humans weren't just capable of mental intimacy. They might be the best at it.